Hi guys, it's Rick Baxter here with Cost Control Software. Wanted to do a little presentation on the PlannerOne production scheduler specific to planning groups and planning sectors. You kind of need to understand this if you are in a multi-company or multi-plant environment. And when I say multi-company or multi-plant, let me explain that first, and then we'll get into the application. So I'm going to bring up a little map here. Yeah, so here's an example where you might have 4 different plants in Washington, North Dakota, New York, and Florida. So the way you set up your software can be from one company to the next can be very different. It could be that you have one company and 4 locations, or you could have 4 companies, one for each of these locations, and then treat them as intercompany transactions between these different plants. What I'm going to talk about today is one company and multiple locations or multiple plants. When you use PlannerOne, it is called multiple sectors. Okay, so we're going to talk about these planning sectors. It's important to understand this. So it's one company, so you have one company, and we're going to have multiple and separate scheduling areas. For example, north and south. We want to separate our scheduling areas, but it's still all within one master company, not separate federal ID numbers. It's just one company. So the possibility here is to create several working environments within one company. So one company, think of this as one company is a working plan. That's where and generally you have one planner who is scheduling that one location. Okay. And no resources or projects are shared between the two planning sectors. So it's totally separate, even though it's in one company. Now, when you open PlannerOne, you'll get this little dialog right here that asks you which planning sector you want to view. Do you want to go with Kronos International and see the unassigned activities or the unassigned resources? Or do you want to go to the Birmingham location or to the London location? Okay, so one company, got to stress this, I can't stress this enough, one company with different sites where activities have to be planned separately within this one company. Okay, so here's how we do it. So the planning sectors are set up first. So the first thing you've got to do is you go into the PlannerOne area within your departments, and you'll see these 2 choices here called planning sector and planning group. First thing is set up your planning sectors, north, south, east, west, whatever the locations are, you'll set up the planning sectors. Then within the sectors, you'll go to planning groups, this second choice here, and you'll tell it how many or what the groups are within those locations. Now, the way I've got mine structured here, I only have one location or one planning group within that one location. So I have north, and then the planning sector is north. Then I have south is my planning group, and it's within south. So you could have one or multiple planning groups within a particular planning sector. For this presentation, we're going to keep it real simple and just have north within north and south within south. Okay, now, one of the things you will have to do once you've established those planning sectors, you will need to reinitialize your PlannerOne setup. So just go into your PlannerOne setup, go to the production scheduler adapter area, and you'll see these new sectors north and south, and you need to run the reinit. Now, if you've not done this before or you need assistance with this process, just give us a call and we'll be glad to walk you through it. What you want to see is that in nav and in production scheduler, both of these are set to true. That way you've got your that you've got your sectors set up and ready to go. So that's one of the first things you've got to do once the first thing is you've got to set these up here, and then you run the initialization to create in the production scheduler area, those sectors. Okay, now let's talk a little more about planning groups. Okay, a group is basically one entity, and it's designed to allow you to filter resources or projects within that one group. So no resources or projects are shared between the two planning groups. So if you have multiple planning groups, okay, then the resources are not shared between them. So think of it this way. You have one on one site, that's a sector. You have one planning group per site. So it's one planning group per site, or you could have more, one plus more planning groups per site. So it's pretty simple to set this up. Here's another little picture that kind of helps explain the concept. So you have the company, one company, so that's the big rectangle here. Within the company, you have these two planning sectors, planning sector 1 and planning sector 2. I just called them the north, planning sector north, and then the south, planning sector south, the south plant. So it's just however you want to name them. I'm just using north and south as an example here. Within the planning group of the north plant, I'm going to have one planning group, and all my work centers, okay, work center 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are within that. Actually, just one. And then in planning sector 2, I have two groups. Okay, this is the possibility of having two groups within that one sector, or you could have just one, and one. And then those, but the work centers are going to be unique to those planning groups. So you got to give some thought to this as far as how you set up the work centers, because they are assigned specifically to those planning groups. Now the machine centers, because they're already assigned to a particular work center, that's if you're even using machine centers. Not everyone uses machine centers, but if you are, remember the work centers, or I'm sorry, the machine centers are already linked to the work center. So as long as you have the work center assigned to the appropriate planning group, which might be north, then all of the machines would of course be linked to that automatically, just because that's how it works. Okay, now a couple more little tips here on the routing setup. So it is possible to link a routing to a planning group. So on your routing setup, which you see here, here's a sample routing setup for an FG101. And I've got a mixer, an oven, a cooling rack, and then the packing department. These are the work centers. And you'll notice they are assigned to planning group south. So what that is telling the software is whenever you create a production order, which you see down here, so here's a new production order, and there's the production order lines to produce, in this case, a bicycle, but it's whatever item you want to produce. You'll notice that the planning group then gets automatically filled in. Doesn't look like I've got south in there, but that this would say south. So it actually pulls in the appropriate planning group for this, for the line of this production order. So just a little tip there, just put this, put your planning group on the router, and then it links it, of course, automatically. Okay, so a couple other comments is that you can see your planning groups very clearly when you bring up a list of work centers. So you assign your work centers to the desired planning group, and the machine centers will follow right along. So here is a good example. So work center 100, the assembly department, is in the south planning group. So is 200, the packing department, that's in the south planning group. The work center 300 and 400 also in the south planning group. And you may have multiple work centers. Again, it's one company, multiple work centers, but we separate them by this concept of putting the planning group on that particular work center. Okay, with that in mind, then when you open up your PlannerOne, you will be asked which sector you want to manage for that session. So when you are going in as the scheduler, you tell it whether you want to open up the undefined work centers, or the North Work Center, or the South Work Center. You tell it which environments, as select an environment. So you'll see this message on the screen. You'll simply select that, and then magically, okay, if you are in the north sector, it will just show the north only work centers and machine centers. As you see here, it's pre-filtered. There's no others. In my sample, I've only got two work centers in the north sector, and so the scheduler would be, for that area, would be managing the planning board with just these two sectors. And then I think I've got a picture here. Yeah, here is the south sector. So in the south sector, a little more detail here. We have work center 200, and it's got 3 machines in it: 210, 220, and 230, these packing tables and packing machine. And here's the schedule for those. And then we've got 300 and 400, and you see the machines within those work centers come right along, and the scheduling would be done there. So this would be the view that the scheduler in the south sector would see. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, all we're doing is separating it so that one scheduler sees his specific plant, think of it as their specific plant, and the other scheduler sees their specific plant within one company. Okay, now it's no problem if you have multiple companies in your NAV setup, then each company is going to have its own work centers and machine centers, and the scheduler would not be affected by any of them. But if you have one company, the key here is it's one company, multiple sectors within that one company. Okay, so the planning sectors and groups, the magic, if you select the undefined location, oh, this is a little tip here as well. The undefined location, you'll be scheduling all the unassigned work centers and their machine centers. So do understand, if you pick the unassigned, remember back here, let me go back to this. If you pick this one, okay, right here, where we have an unassigned sector, then you're going to be scheduling all the unassigned work centers and machine centers versus the ones that are in north and south. Then you're going to be scheduling the north sectors, or you'll be scheduling here the south sector activity. So that's my tip today of how to use the planning sectors and planning groups. I encourage you to try this out. If you have questions about this setup, please give us a call here at Cost Control Software. We would be glad to assist you with any questions you might have. Thanks for taking a look.